It is my pleasure to introduce the valedictorian for the class of 2017, Andrew Faulkenberry.
Thank you, Mr. Calder. Firstly, I'd like to thank the many people who have brought us to this moment. Thank you to Interim Superintendent Dr. Vaz and the Spotswood Board of Education for keeping the inner workings of our district running smoothly. To Mr. Calder, Mr. Mastasario, and the administrative staff for keeping us in line as best as was possible. To our devoted advisors, Frau Altmiller and Mrs. Knapp, who I suspect will get a good night's sleep for the first time in 4 years tonight. And a special thank you to the entire faculty who don't get recognized often enough for what they do. It's easy to forget, as we slowly suffocate in a pile of homework, how much our teachers really do for us. They've dedicated their lives to the betterment of ours, and that is a gift we can never repay. But most importantly, it's you who we should thank. The valued family members, friends, and guests who join us in the gym or cafetorium, as well as the countless individuals not present tonight whose efforts have contributed to our journeys. Your undying dedication has been invaluable to our development as academics, athletes, artists, and individuals. All right, so I have two stories that I want to share with you tonight. The first one, those of you who graduated from Memorial Middle School might remember. It was our 8th grade moving on ceremony, and addressing us was the recently hired superintendent, Dr. Scott Rocco. The overarching topic of his speech, I would say, was what we should strive for as we entered high school. Specifically, he emphasized what, in his estimation, were the two most important aspects of our educational experience, which he called A and E, academics and involvement. Unfortunately for him, the majority of his point was undermined by the fact that the word involvement doesn't start with the letter E. Now, you could consider this as an indictment of the very educational system being commemorated. But I prefer to view it as my first taste of the true lessons I would learn in high school. One, that you're going to make mistakes. And two, that some people are going to make fun of you for making those mistakes. And those lessons might seem trivial, but I assure you, in a world filled with high expectations, it's incredibly important to remind ourselves we're only human, that it's okay to make mistakes. The reality is we're drowning in expectations from our families, from our friends, from our enemies, and from ourselves. Expectations that tell us what the perfect life looks like. Expectations that tell us we should go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, retire, and die, in that order. If that's your dream, I ask you now, give it up. Not that there's anything wrong with having a plan, but if you have the perfect picture of what you want your life to be, you're inevitably going to be disappointed, because you're going to make mistakes. You will fail. You'll stain that perfect picture you drew up in your mind. The question becomes, can you live with the stains? It's difficult to, when the expectations run so deep to our very core and try to dictate who we are. We're expected to be kind, charitable, humble, but still outstanding, involved in extracurricular activities, drowning in extracurricular activities, but mostly academically minded, except family comes first. We become a breathing, walking resume. You may feel as you don't have the time for mistakes, but I guarantee mistakes will make the time for you. Because regardless of the expectations we face, academically, athletically, socially, they so quickly can become burdens. They pile up so high that it seems like the smallest of errors will derail our entire life. So sometimes it's worth it to remind ourselves that we aren't so fragile that one slip-up will ruin us. In fact, our failures are what strengthen us the most. We become resilient. It's a good thing, too, because the very act of living requires every ounce of resilience the human spirit can muster. We make a lot of mistakes and do a lot of things we'd rather not admit. Which brings me to my second story, which I like to call the blue badge story. It's a story of challenges, but more importantly, a story of resilience. So a little backstory is required. Each year back in elementary school, we used to participate in what was called the Presidential Fitness Challenge in phys ed. Yeah? So, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, they'd have us participate in 6 or 7 fitness tests, and for each one there were 2 benchmark times or distances. One was the national benchmark, which was the easier of the 2 to achieve. And the other one was the more prestigious presidential benchmark. Now, if you missed any of the national benchmarks, you got a little white badge, the participation award. That was the lowest tier. If you made all the national benchmarks, but missed one or more of the presidential benchmarks, you got a national physical fitness award, which was a slightly bigger red badge. But if you made all the presidential benchmarks in all the events, you were among the elite. You got the presidential physical fitness award, the blue badge. Now, in my elementary school days, I wouldn't say I was athletic, but I could get by. In the 3rd grade, the first time I participated in the challenge, I was able to hit all of the presidential benchmarks except for one, the mile run. I was painfully close to the blue badge, but was stuck with a smaller, inferior red one. So when the 4th grade rolled along, I knew what I had to do. I was determined. But then the same thing happened again. I qualified for everything else, but I couldn't cut my mile time down to the 8 minutes and 33-second maximum for the blue badge. Apparently, though, our gym teacher, Mrs. Puff, took pity on me because she told me that if I wanted, I could try again on the makeup day. And there was a glimmer of hope. Now, typically, the makeup day was reserved for people who were absent the first time or missed it for some other reason. So most of the other runners didn't really care. I don't think they realized what an important day this was for me. This was the culmination of what would either be a triumphant victory or a tragic defeat. And naturally, I was anxious walking out to the fields behind the school where the run would take place. My heart was pounding as we lined up on the starting line. 8 minutes and 33 seconds for 3 1/4 laps around the fields. And when Mrs. Puff yelled go, I was off. I started strong. Felt good. It was a cool day in the fall. The leaves were crunching under my feet with each step. In my mind, I thought, I can do this. And as with anyone who's ever run before, I can do this quickly became, why in God's name am I doing this? My legs begged for rest. My asthmatic lungs gasped for mercy. But it didn't matter. 8 minutes, 33 seconds was all that mattered. So my feet kept going. The leaves kept crunching. It was the last lap, and I knew it would be close. I dug deep within myself, in a way I don't think I ever had before, nor have since, until all I could feel was the rhythm of my feet on the ground. All I could hear was the numbers over and over in my mind, 8:33. I got to the home stretch. Mrs. Puff was urging me forward, squeezing every ounce of energy left in me out. I had tunnel vision, was desperately clinging to consciousness, but was still running. Stride by stride, gasp by gasp, I staggered across the finish line and stared wide-eyed at Mrs. Puff as she looked down at her stopwatch. And not 2 seconds after she announced my time, 8 minutes, 33 seconds on the dot, I collapsed on the ground in victory and wet my pants. Applaud for that. All right. Now, you may be thinking, isn't the 4th grade a little bit old to be wetting yourself? The answer is yes, it is. You may also be thinking, isn't this the kind of thing people could make fun of you for? The answer is they could, but I beat them to the punch. Finally, you might be thinking that this wasn't how you expected the Blue Badge story to go. True, no one's going to make a major motion picture about it. There's no storybook ending. It's just a kid with a felt badge and soggy sweatpants. But what's wrong with that? That's what life looks like. Embarrassing, uncomfortable. Not some picture of the perfect job with the perfect wife with whom you have 3 perfect children. Someone along the line is going to piss all over that dream, and it just might be you. What can we do then but live as we were meant to live, imperfectly? What can we do but fail tests, forget anniversaries, total cars, mistake A's for E's and E's for I's? Life has made it clear that those things will happen to us, and they are not up for negotiation. What we can control, however, is whether or not we take them in stride. It's easy to be ashamed of our failures. Easy to hide them from the world and pretend they never happened. But what's the fun in that? Taking pride in our failures turns awkward memories into great stories, embarrassing childhood accidents into graduation speeches. Never have I ever is a lot less fun when no one ever admits they've done anything. So as you leave today, I encourage you to remember the morals these stories provide us. Know you'll make mistakes. Realize people will make fun of you for it, so why not join them? Also, surround yourself with people who will support you along your imperfect journey. I wish for each and every one of you a Mrs. Puff to cheer you through every finish line you encounter. And most importantly, do not let the fear of failure stop you from doing. Whatever it is you want to do it proudly and do it boldly. When you trip and when you fail, get up and do again. Be unafraid and go the extra mile. Just make sure you bring a change of pants along the way.